Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode. We are nearing the holidays, and I wanted to do an episode about the history of Thanksgiving. My favorite time of the year, why we celebrate it, and what's it about.
You mean you ain't gonna talk about something scary like you usually do in your episode?
That's right, Larry.
That means you're giving us a history lesson instead. I'm getting the hell out of here today.
Why?
Because this is gonna be boring as shit. I'm here to talk about stuff that interests me, and that's scary stuff, not some boring crap like this.
Larry, you can't be serious, man.
I am, boy. Call me when you get done.
All right. Sit down, man. Come on. Just sit down.
Are you gonna be talking about some scary stuff?
All right, look. I'll make a deal with you. There is a story that I can talk about that's scary.
Like what?
How the Pilgrims landed? All right, man. Okay.
Okay, what is it?
There's one.
Keep talking, boy.
Well, first I want to do the history first. Okay, Larry, let's do this then. I'm going to negotiate with you.
Start talking, boy.
If you let me get my history out of the way, I'll talk to you about two stories that are scary. Capiche?
Start talking, boy.
The celebration of Thanksgiving has been a major key in our culture for centuries. But what is Thanksgiving and what is it about? In September of 1620, the small ship of Mayflower left Plymouth, England, 102 passengers. Some were rebellious against their religion, so they wanted to practice their faith freely, while others hoped to find land and a better life in the New World. The trip across the Atlantic took at least 66 hard days with rough weather conditions. They were aiming for the Hudson River area, but ended up near Cape Cod, which was far too north. By November, they moved to Massachusetts Bay and built their settlement in Plymouth, beginning a tough but hopeful new chapter. During the harsh winters, a lot of the colonists would stay on the ships while they were suffering from cold diseases. Only half of the original crew and passengers survived to see the first spring. In March, the remaining settlers moved into land, only to be surprised by a member of the Abenaki tribe who spoke English. A few days later, he returned with Squanto, a Patuxet tribe. Squanto had been captured by an English captain and was sold into slavery and then escaped to London and then returned home. He also helped them form an alliance between the Wampanoag tribe, which lasted more than 50 years and is a great example of peace between European settlers and Native Americans. Now we're getting to the nitty-gritty. So when was the first Thanksgiving? Well, this happened in November of 1621. After the Pilgrims had a successful corn harvest, Governor William Bradford arranged a feast to celebrate. And it was then that this event was called the first Thanksgiving, even though the Pilgrims didn't call it at that time. The feast lasted for 3 days, and even though we don't know what was served, much of what we know comes from Pilgrim Edward Winslow's account.
After our harvest, our governor sent 4 men to hunt fowls so we could celebrate together. They managed to hunt enough birds to feed the whole group for nearly a week. During the feast, we also practiced with our weapons, and many Native Americans came to join us, including their leader, Massasoit, who brought 90 men. We spent 3 days feasting, and the Wampanoag even brought 5 deer to share with us. They gave them to our governor, the captain, and other leaders. Although we don't always have as much as we did at this feast, we thank God that we have enough, and we wish you could share it in our good fortune. Historians believe that many of the dishes were cooked using Native American cooking methods and spices. Since the Pilgrims didn't have an oven and sugar had been depleted by the fall of 1621, they didn't have cakes or pies like we do today for Thanksgiving. Some scholars still debate whether the first feast at Plymouth was the first Thanksgiving celebrated in the United States. In 1623, the Pilgrims held their second Thanksgiving in regards to a celebration of a long drought that had nearly ruined their harvest. Governor Bradford had been giving a religious fast to pray for rain. The practice of fasting and giving thanks had become a common ground for the New England settlement. During the American Revolution, the Continental Congress had set 1 or more days aside for Thanksgiving each year. In 1789, President George Washington had made the first Thanksgiving proclamation by the national government to give thanks of the end of the war and, of course, the success of the U.S. Constitution. His successors John Adams and James Madison had also set days of thanks during their presidencies. In 1817, New York became the first state to celebrate Thanksgiving as a yearly holiday, while other states also didn't follow on the same day. In 1827, Sarah Hale, a magazine editor and writer, also started a campaign for Thanksgiving to be a national holiday. She is famous for her famous nursery rhyme, Mary Had a Little Lamb, and for 36 years she wrote editorials and letters to senators and presidencies, and she is also known as the Mother of Thanksgiving. But one president would finally listen to her after all this time, and that was in 1863 with Abraham Lincoln.
He issued a proclamation for Americans to help pray for those affected by the war and to help heal the country's wounds. Lincoln set Thanksgiving on the last Thursday of November, and it was celebrated that way until 1939, when President Franklin D. Roosevelt moved Thanksgiving up a week to boost sales during the Great Depression. In 1941, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed a bill to make Thanksgiving the fourth Thursday of November, and it was then that he called it Franksgiving, even though Americans didn't like that name title. In many American homes, Thanksgiving has lost its original meaning, which is instead celebrated as cooking and sharing a big meal with family and friends. Turkey, which is served as a symbol of Thanksgiving, likely wasn't served when the Pilgrims first landed in 1621. According to the National Turkey Federation, 90% of Americans eat turkey in their American homes, whether it's deep fried, roasted, or baked. This is including mashed potatoes, stuffing, and cranberry sauce. Volunteering has also become a common activity on Thanksgiving, as there are food drives and also organizations of people helping those in need who don't have food or families. Parades have also become an important factor in towns and cities in the U.S. Since 1924, Macy's department store has hosted their parade in New York City. The parade attracts at least 2 to 3 million Americans worldwide, and it includes marching bands of TV performers and celebrities with floats that are shaped like cartoon characters. Since the mid-1900s, there were presidents that pardoned at least 1 or 2 turkeys, meaning that they allowed the turkeys to be sent to a farm to live normal lives without being slaughtered or killed. But the government is usually on top of this. Many U.S. governors also take this tradition in pardoning a turkey. Regardless of all these stories of when Thanksgiving was started and how and where, we do at least have an idea that it dates back into the English colonies and goes in the interaction between Native Americans and Europeans right across from the Atlantic.
Boy, you promised me tonight that you would make this episode scary. Now I'm wasting a stud line. So my last question and final warning is, are you or are you not making this episode scary?
Well, it depends. Are you going to stop being a prick about it and let me start before I change my mind?
Yes or no?
I am, dude. Just chill. I was just getting to that before you rudely interrupted me. The story is about a young man who killed his relatives and family on Thanksgiving Day. The Privicki family murder story. Seth Privicki was your typical teen in Muscogee, Michigan at Reeves Puffer High School. Classmates described him as troubling and polite, but his parents saw a troubling sign. His dad thought he had no conscience, and his mom thought he was out of control. Seth Privicki, a troubled 18-year-old, claimed that his father was trying to kick him out of the house after his parents told him that they no longer loved him. These arguments were happening for months, and it enraged Seth because his family took his car away after getting a C on his report card. That day, Seth took his father's .22 Ruger handgun, and he waited until his father left to go pick up his grandfather. First, he shot his brother in the back of the head while he was watching TV and dragged his body into the basement. When his father and grandfather had returned to the house at approximately 12:45 p.m., Seth was able to ambush them and shot both of them in the back of the head and shooting his grandfather twice, ensuring that he was dead. Afterwards, Seth went upstairs, waiting for his mother to come out of the shower. When she got out of the shower, he shot her as well. Later, his brother's girlfriend, April Boss, had also arrived at the house. When she went into the kitchen and saw the bodies, Seth shot her in the head as well. At around 2 p.m., Seth called his friend Stephen, who was also the same age as him, to help clean up the scene of the bodies. Wallace arrived and helped Seth wrap the bodies in sheets. Wallace disposed the gun and ammunition in a pond and went on his regular day activities. While Wallace was out, Seth continued to clean the house, mopping up blood and going to the stores to get duct tape. That night, Boss's parents went into the house and saw the horrific scene in the kitchen of the bodies. But being afraid to enter the house, they ended up calling the police, and as this was going on, Seth and Wallace had fled into the woods, hiding from the police. When officers arrived, they held back because they were scared that the killer was still in the house. He confessed and cooperated with the investigators. Meanwhile, a local manhunt for Seth began, causing schools to go into lockdown. Seth remained hidden for nearly 13 hours before being found in a barn. A schoolmate had unknowingly given him a ride earlier, but later reported him to the police. When police arrested Seth, he said nothing other than requesting a lawyer. Evidence including bloody clothing and a stolen TV was found in one of the family's cars. This tragic and chilling crime shocked the community and remains one of the most brutal Thanksgiving crimes that happened in the U.S. In the year before the tragedy, Seth had previous legal problems with the police. He was caught stealing beer and shot shoplifting and selling it to minors. He completed probation, and the courts ordered him to take antidepressants and go to counseling, but these measures didn't allow him to stop his violent behavior. On December 1st, 1998, Seth Privity was charged with 5 counts of murder, including a set of $5 million bail. Stephen Wallace, who had helped him clean up the crime with the murders, was also set with the same amount of bail and also same charge. At first, Privity blamed his brother for the murders, claiming it was part of a murder-suicide plan that went wrong. However, the day after the murders, he confessed. Officers described him as emotionless after his arrest and acted like nobody was home. Privity pled no contest and was found guilty in 5 counts of felony firearm charges. On May 27, 1999, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He had asked the judge to see the world before he was sentenced to prison, but the judge denied it. Wallace's charges were reduced to 5 counts of being an accessory and 5 counts of felony firearm charges. His defense argued that he only helped Seth in fear for his life, and on November of 1999, Wallace was acquitted by the jury. A Muskogee County detective described the verdict as a travesty. After his acquittal, Wallace faced new charges of vandalism that had happened on the day of the murders. On July 15th of 2010, Seth Privity was shot and killed while trying to escape Ken Cross Correctional Facility, a medium-security prison in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. He had been involved in 32 prison violations, such as gambling, theft, substance abuse, and possessing a weapon. During the escape, Privity and other inmates actually hijacked the prison staff's semi-truck at approximately 9:10 a.m. They used it to ram 2 security fences, creating a large opening. When the men got out and tried to run, guards ordered them to stop. Privity, unfortunately, was ignoring the correctional officer's commands while he was running, so they shot and killed him while the other 2 inmates that was with him surrendered. Ironically, he died the same way as he killed his relatives earlier, being shot in the head. The 2 other men involved, Andrew Joseph Ross and Brian Lee Davidson, were both serving life sentences for murder.
So a kid murdered his family and claims that his parents didn't love him? Wow, that's nuts.
You always need to be there for your kid no matter what. Unlike these parents out there that spoil the kids. There's no respect.
Yeah, you're right. When I was a kid, my papa hit me on the back. Now, I know I might be crazy and all to this day, but that taught me respect.
You know, it's been a while since we agreed on something. The next one I have is going to be a similar story, only the difference is it's a father murdering some of his family members, and it happened in Jupiter, Florida. The Thanksgiving murders that happened in Jupiter, Florida on November 26, 2009 is one of the most tragic events that happened on this holiday. On Thanksgiving Day, Paul was invited to dinner by his parents despite being distant with his extended family. The dinner was hosted at his cousin's house, located in a gated community in Jupiter, Florida. And the gathering seemed like a normal holiday because his twin sisters Carla and Lisa were there along with his 6-year-old cousin Michaela. However, the situation would take a drastic turn when Merhige arrived. At around 10 p.m., Merhige needed to leave the house in the pretense of getting something out of his car. Shortly afterward, he had come in the house with a gun, thus shooting his 2 twin sisters, Carla and Lisa, including their newborn, and as well their 6-year-old cousin by the name of Michaela, along with his 76-year-old aunt Raymond Joseph. Merhige then fled the scene in his car. While the exact motive for the murders remains unclear, it was later revealed by some of his family members that he had been carrying a deep resentment towards his twin sisters. And it was reported that he had been planning the killing for years. At the dinner table during the attack, he said, "I've been waiting 20 years to do this," a statement that shocked those who survived the ordeal. Merhige's family had been aware of his troubled behavior, and he was distant with some of his family members due to his history of prior violent outbursts. Yet his parents still chose to invite him to the Thanksgiving, probably because of his sense of reconciliation or obligation. His anger likely worsened over time, contributing to the rage that was involved with the brutal shooting. Following the murders, Merhige fled the scene, causing a nationwide manhunt. He had withdrawn a large sum of money from his bank account before the killings in hopes of covering up his tracks. Merhige was able to remain on the run for at least more than a month. Now, being that this was the largest manhunt, there were law enforcement agencies from multiple states also getting involved. Merhige was eventually apprehended on January 8, 2010 in the Florida Keys, before being spotted and captured. In 2011, Merhige pleaded guilty in exchange for a life sentence without the possibility of parole in order to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences with the murdering of his family. The Thanksgiving killings left a lasting impact on the community, along with Merhige's surviving family members that still can't mourn the loss and tragic events that had occurred that day of the loved ones that was lost in such a horrific manner. Now, the question that investigators have is how could a man with a mental illness history have the idea of wanting to kill his family members on a day that's about family unity and gratitude. And the case continues to be a reminder of the darkness that can emerge within families, especially if there's issues of turmoil built up from all these years and resentment. I mean, if there's a problem with your relatives, just talk about it. There's no way in hell that you would want to do that as a first sign. I mean, this is your family members. These are your friends for life that are going to be on this planet with you. So, Larry, what's your opinion on this?
Judging by the book, I'd say it's one hell of a story, really. I mean, why would you do that to your family on a Thanksgiving day, or even do that, period?
Honestly, it seemed like this guy had communication issues with his family because he had a lot of resentment with his sisters. I mean, even if it's bothering you, I mean, at least write a diary about it, if it's really personal, or even if that doesn't help, I mean, at least communicate to your friends about it and see if they can help you. So you want to close this off?
Oh yeah, by the way, I got a trick to show you, David. You know how my one eye is cockeyed? I'm gonna say this one comment with my right eye normal. You ready for this?
That's right, and this is the side of Larry that I don't see.
Say what? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, have a happy Thanksgiving, and please be safe out there.
Like and subscribe, and remember, happy Thanksgiving, because Christmas is next, so buckle your seatbelts. Larry, you're one hell of a guy, man.
Don't push me, boy. That was hard. Judging by the book, I'd say it's a